premise of this video is very, very simple. We've got main, side, and neither. Now, what I want to do is I want to take you through these 50 cards that I have in front of you. The idea is that I want to give you a bit more information as to why you would main deck something, why you would side deck something, and why you might consider doing neither. Now, it will ultimately end up coming down to personal preference. If you prefer to main deck a particular card as a tech card, that is also absolutely fine. And I feel that sometimes maining a particular tech card can be the difference between like a win and a loss sometimes. The reason that a card is probably considered not to be as effective or as seen in multitude of decks or top end decks is because of its effectiveness throughout. So you look at something like Ghost Ogre, or you look at something like Ghost Bell sometimes as well, and other kind of cards and options of those choosing. So let's start off with Ash Blossom. Now, with Ash Blossom, personally, the thing with Ash Blossom, in my opinion, is it's one of the ones that you're not going to neither it, right? Okay, more times than not, Ash Blossom is either going to be a main or the side. Ash Blossom, in my opinion, is just so generically good, no matter what deck you face, that you might as well main it or not bother. I know there has been some times in the past where we have seen Ash Blossoms in people's side decks, which is absolutely fine. They are times where maybe the environment or the format or anything else in between kind of comes down to Ash Blossom being a little bit off, not being as good or as consistent. Now, since this came out, which I believe came out in, I think Ash Blossom is nearly 10 years old, which is wild. Maximum Crisis. I think, is Ash 10 years old? Yeah, Ash is like 9 years old. I believe Maximum Crisis came out in either 2016 or 2017. Yeah, so it came out in 2017. So Ash Blossom is going to be 10 years old next year, which is crazy. But Ash is a card that I would, you're either going to main it or you're not going to bother. In a very odd format, in a very odd scenario, you might consider siding it. But to me, you're either maining it or you're just going to go, I'm not going to bother. Moving on to Mulcharmy Fualos. Mulcharmy Fualos is a little bit less so than Ash Blossom. And what I mean by that is, again, you're either going to, you're going to main a Mulcharmy, right? You're going to probably, the most consistent one that you would main is going to be Fualos. But if you go into an environment where you know that Perulia is better, you would main the Perulia. If you know that Meows is better, you're going to main the Meows. But overall, Fualos is the best generic option. Some people might consider to side it, but I feel that in the environment that we're in, and now that everyone or more people have access to the chummies, usually what you do is you main one of them of your choosing, and then you side the other ones. And the reason the other ones are being in a side and not in the main over Fualos is that Fualos covers summoning from the main deck and the extra deck. Whereas Perulia is only summoning from the hand, which unless you're playing a very specific deck like Enneacrafts or unless you're up against something like Mech Knights or Regenesis, they're not going to consistently summon from the deck. So the best you'll get is like 1, maybe 2 draws. Whereas with Fualos, the modernized deck does want to kind of play through the extra deck quite a lot. So that is more, and sometimes summon from the deck. Also on top of that as well, very rarely do you get cards that start change to summon from the hand. Like in the Regenesis example, Regenesis just go, cool, summon. So you can't really put your opponent in a position where they go, for example, Tribute Requiem, chain Fualos, and guarantee you a draw. So Fua really does give you a bit more of a guarantee. With Meows, Meows is very format specific because Meows is summoning back from the graveyard or the banishment, which is kind of a very specific scenario, very specific decks do that, and you might not get as much of advantage. Not saying that it's bad, but it's not one of them ones where you would neither it. It's just one of the ones that, like this one probably sits on this line here that if you were to cut any of them, it'd be Meows. We're in a format right now where Meows is near enough a guaranteed side deck card. So it gives you a bit more flex to work with and a couple of different options to kind of look at. Let's look at Harpy's Feather Duster. What have I got? I've got Harpy's Feather Duster, Raigeki, Lightning Storm. I should have a Triple Tactics Thrust here somewhere. Yeah, there we go. Triple Tactics Thrust. There are loads of Thrust targets I'll talk about in a little bit as well. So let's look at Lightning Storm, Raigeki, and Harpy's Feather Duster. And the reason I'm going to look at these is these are pretty much all on the same kind of bracket. And what I mean by that is they're all go second cards. They're all breaker cards. Lightning Storm does the job of Raigeki or Harpy's Feather Duster in one card. The downside is you have to control no face-up cards to activate it. So there are, of course, always going to be pros and cons and everything in between with it. Now, with these particular cards, sometimes it really comes down to the space you have available to you. You're not going to main deck these cards purely because of the stuff that I've already mentioned, that they are only a good card going second. Now, I know Fuelos is the exact same thing, but Fuelos is more consistent and can draw you into more pieces, and sometimes people use it as a normal summon, some people use it as like fodder, discard fodder, or anything else in between. That, of course, yes, you can say that the same could be applied to Lightning Storm as well. But what you're really looking at with stuff like this is that you're either going to be going, right, well, Raigeki's really good in my environment because Lightning Storm only destroys attack position monsters. Or you're going to go, I haven't got a lot of space in my side deck. I'm only going to play 3 Lightning Storm because 3 Lightning Storm will do the job of Lightning Storm, of Raigeki and Harpy's Feather Duster. Sometimes you'll play the Feather Duster above everything else because you feel that your deck is strong enough to deal with your opponent's attack position and defense position monsters. So like Raigeki is like the lowest end of them. If anything, your Lightning Storm is going to be the one you consider to side more times than not. You're not going to main it unless you're playing a go second breaking deck. And even then, when you're playing a go second breaker deck, you kind of look more towards stuff like Super Polymerization. You look at stuff like Nibiru before you really consider Lightning Storm. So it's a bit of an odd one in that sense, but that's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles. Harpy's Feather Duster, again, is higher than Raigeki in my opinion on this one. I definitely feel it's one that you should consider. I definitely feel that it's a card that you should consider siding. I wouldn't say side all of them, but I would say that when you're looking at it, you're either going to go, right, well, I'm playing Triple Tactics Thrust, so I'll play 1, 1, and 1. Or you're like, I'm not playing Triple Tactics Thrust, but I'll play 3 of this. So keep in mind as well that more times than not, your Duster and your Raigeki can be used past turn 1, whereas or your first turn, whereas the Lightning Storm gets a little bit less consistent. Let's have a look at... What should we look at next? Let's have a look at Droll and Lockbird. Droll and Lockbird is quite an interesting one right now because Droll and Lockbird used to be, like, it's one of these cards that drops in and out of a format. So usually when you were putting a build together, your first hand interactions on the list would be Ash Blossom, Fuelos, and then Droll. Droll dips in and out of a format. Sometimes Droll will be here. Sometimes Droll will be here. And sometimes Droll will be here. Whereas, like, Ash, very rarely is it in here. Like, Droll floats between these 3 more times than probably any of these, in my opinion. I don't think we're in an environment where maining Droll is there. But again, I definitely feel that Droll is one of them ones that is on the top of... it's on the top of the list. It's top of the selection. It's one of the ones that you would... when you're putting your side deck together, again, quite like how I said your main deck, you'd go Ash Blossom, Fuelos. In your side deck, you'd probably go Droll and then Perulia or Meows. Like, they're the 2 you kind of look at. Because the Droll is great for going first or going second. Whereas the Perulia or the Meows, it's something that you double down on when you know you're going second. So, Triple Tactics Thrust, pretty much the same ilk as the Raigeki, the Lightning Storm, and everything else. And I'm going to do all of the Triple Tactics Thrust targets. Is Triple Tactics Thrust, it had this little grey period where people were considering to main it just because we had so many turn 0 plays with stuff like K9 Azuna, with Phimena, cards like that allowed you to kind of get you the most advantage off of the back of this. Now, more times than not, again, quite as we follow the same curve, you can never guarantee that you're going to go first or second once you do the dice roll. Some people, you know, you're going to build to go second, you're not going to care about the dice roll that much, and your whole main deck is going to change anyway because rather than maining your Ash, you're probably going to side the Ash. You're going to max out on like your Perulias and your Fueloses sometimes. So there's a lot to kind of consider. But it's the exact same reason that people don't main deck hard go first cards in like Judgments. And it's why most people don't main loads of hard go second cards. So it kind of gives you that flexibility of if you win the dice roll and if you don't win the dice roll and what kind of options you have. So with Triple Tactics Thrust, again, it's one of the ones that you're either going to side it or you're not going to bother. It's one of the ones that you're only going to side it if you naturally have normal spells and traps that you can search, that you want access to. And also, you're only going to side it if you are playing cards that you don't have the space of at 3 or you want more of a variety. So if your varieties can be evenly matched, different dimension grounds. It can also be, I wouldn't say Goku's inscription for sure. Where are we? Droll tactic talents, there we go. And I believe, Dark Rule no more. So for consistency, usually if you're not playing other trap cards and you know that your environment dies to Dark Rule no more, you're going to play 3 Dark Rule no more. That's just like a no-brainer. If you know your environment dies to evenly matched, you play 3 evenly matched. You're not going to rely on your opponent to activate something to Trill Tactics thrust them. You'd much rather play 3 of this, 3 of this, or 3 of this, and double down on them, or technically triple down on them. Again, these cards would be mained in particular scenarios, in particular environments. But more times than not, it's one of these ones that you put on the side and then you would put either 2 thrust or 3, and then you play like your one-off targets, give or take. Artifact Lancia. I think that Artifact Lancia, and I was having this conversation with someone the other day, with Malice around, it was like this. It was like, again, quite like Droll, but it was the first card that went on your side deck when Malice was like in the peak. Now, Malice is also one of these decks right now that have kind of come back in the fray. They're kind of considered as like a rogue style deck, even though they're technically meta as well. That might definitely change the next Forbidden Limited list. I'll be amazed if they're still as strong as they are. Which is why Lancia has kind of drifted from the side, because the format is so varied right now. You kind of want this varied approach of thrust with 1 targets or a range of targets like Eradicator Virus and stuff like that. And it's the exact same the reason why people may not consider side decking in Lance, for the pure fact that they're like, well, right now Meows or a Meow will hit more decks. It has more of a range. Whereas Lancia, it's only going to hit Malice, and it may only protect you against Evenly. So unless you're going to get absolutely wiped out by Evenly and everyone is now on Evenly, you're not going to consider playing Lancia. So Lancia is one of them cards right now that, again, there will be preference. There will be someone that goes, well, Malice are always winning my local, so I'm always going to side in the Lanciers. That's absolutely fine. In a grand scheme of things, when there is 15 players or 16 players or more or whatever at a local environment, and only 1 person is on Malice, you're probably not going to be... Like, so let's put it this way, right? There's 10 players, one of them being you as the individual. Of those 10 players, 1 person is on Malice, right? You are playing whatever deck you want and you can't face them. So, you've got 9 decks to consider. Now, of course, if out of those 9 decks, 3 of them were Malice, you'd be well within your right to be like, right, well, I'm going to side deck Lancia. As only 1 of them is Malice, and let's say the others are more affected by Meows or more affected by something like Chaos Hunter, you might consider going down that route instead. So while we're talking about Lancia, Chaos Hunter as well, it's kind of fallen in this position. Sometimes, again, if you're going to a big regional and you expect loads of people to be on Malice, you might try and slip one of these into your side deck. That's just kind of the way the cookie kind of crumbles. Kaijus, I'm going to put Lava Golem with Kaiju right now. And we're going to talk about both of those. With Lava Golems and Kaijus and stuff like that, I feel that there are times where Lunar Lights will run rampant if your deck cannot naturally out a Liger Dancer. Like, if your deck just does not have the capabilities to out a Liger Dancer, you will be putting yourself in a little bit of bother more than you need to do, just because you don't want to, you can't play one of these cards. Now, again, if you're playing Fire Kings, or if you're playing Dinos, or if you're playing a way to search it, or Vanquish Soul, where the fire attribute could be useful for you, you might consider to main deck your Kaiju. I feel that having some form of Kaiju could be quite useful for you. But again, if your environment is loads of Mitsurugis, you're not going to want a Kaiju, because the Kaiju will do diddly squat. If there are no Loonlights running around at your environment, you're probably not going to consider a Kaiju, and even then, sometimes they'll get 2 Liger Dancers on the field, and a single Kaiju isn't going to do the job. I feel that if your deck has the capacity to play Lava Golem, 99.999% of the time, you're either going to main it or you're definitely going to be siding it. So again, it's deck specific. If we're talking about the wider grand scheme of things, I don't think that a Kaiju or a Lava Golem fits within the main deck or the side deck as it currently stands. Now, there's going to be a lot of that where deck cards just don't really fit in that area. But as I mentioned at the start of the video, if you are playing a specific deck or if you have had success with a particular card, then don't let anyone tell you you cannot play it. You take that as your personal choice. And I'll give you a great example in a minute after I have placed the Kaiju and the Lava Golems. So let me place the Lava and the Lava Golem and the Kaijus. So they're going to go in neither. Like, again, kind of like Lancia and Chaos Hunter. If your environment is running rampant with Lunar Lights, you're going to want to consider like a Lava Golem. If your environment is not running rampant and only like 1 out of 10, you're not going to bother with them. So my next example, and this is my personal preference example, is Infinite Impermanence and Forbidden Chalice. Now, again, others can also consider Forbidden Droplet. Now, Forbidden Droplet is one of these cards that, again, deck dependent. It might be in the main deck, it might be in the side deck, or you might not bother. I feel that between Infinite Impermanence, Forbidden Chalice and Forbidden Droplet, one of those will be in the main or the side, and then the others won't. It again comes down to personal preference. Infinite Impermanence used to be one of these cards that was guaranteed on the main. Quite like with Droll, it would be free Ash, free Fuel Loss, free Infinite Impermanence. Right now, people aren't even, like, you're either maining it or you're not going to do it. It's kind of one of the ones. You're either main Infinite Impermanence or you don't play it at all. If you choose not to play Infinite Impermanences, the chances are that you're main decking a Forbidden Droplet. In my example, in a deck where I don't have the resource to be sending with the Forbidden Droplet, and I don't want to play the Infinite Impermanence because I like that the Forbidden Chalice can respond to my opponent's Izuna, to my opponent's Lupus, to my opponent's Fimena going into an Arfulion, I would personally be maining Chalice. Now, this is my preference. In these kind of scenarios, you are either main decking one of these three, or you're not main decking any of them. It's kind of one of them ones, in my opinion, that's kind of how the cookie falls. So we kind of need like a grey area here where this kind of comes down to preference. And I think I might just do that. Let me see if I can add a row below, right? Let's call this player preference. Now, obviously, this all comes down to player preference, but I feel more times than not, you're going to be main decking one of these over any of this, right? These are going to be considered before you consider these, unless your environment is running rampant with, decks that are affected by these. It's just what I'm trying to get at. Let's have a look at what Ghost Sisters we've got. We got all 4 Ghost Sisters. I think we've got the rest of the Ghost Sisters. Let's have a look at the Ghost Sisters, shall we? Ghost Ogre, I think, is actually, again, Ghost Ogre is very format specific. Ghost Ogre is one of these cards that kind of drifts in and out of the format. It's quite like Ghost Spell. You'll probably get a format where Ghost Spell is better, then you'll get a format where Ghost Ogre is better. And again, they kind of drift in and out. I would say, if anything, Ghost Spell is another side deck option. Some players do main it. Now, when you're looking at deck builds currently, deck builds don't just have like 6 hand interaction spaces. That's just not... Very rarely do you see a deck that only uses 6 hand interactions unless their deck is Major Turbo. But the chances are, if a main deck has 3 Ashes, 3 Fuwa, the remaining 2, maybe 3 hand interactions come down to preference, which will be a mixture of Ghost Spells, Forbidden Droplets, and then maybe a Dominus Impulse or a Dominus Purge, depending on what deck you're playing. Okay? And what I'm trying to say with like cards like Ash Blossom and Fuwa is that there's less point inside them, you might as well main them. Ghost Ogre, I feel it deserves a space in the side deck. I still stand by this position that a lot of people are, in today's game, prepared for their card to get Ash Blossomed and they can continue to play, but they're not prepared for their card to get Ghost Ogred. So in that scenario, for example, if you were to go, oh, Cupsy, Yummy Cupsy, it gets... now, they obviously have ways to play around it now, but Yummy Cupsy, they would usually, if it gets Ash, they go, okay, whatever, go into Snatchy. Whereas now, it'd be like, okay, whatever, oh, I can't go into Snatchy, I need to extend, so I need to get the Marshmallow. I'm not saying that's the perfect example, but what I'm trying to say is more people are prepared and ready and kind of preset to play around an Ash Blossom or a Ghost Spell than they are a Ghost Ogre. And I feel that a Ghost Ogre could be considered as the side, but ultimately it comes down to a preference card. It's one of them ones where some players really like it, some players really hate it and won't use it. Reaper, neither. Like, there is just not, in this current format right now, there is just not a consistent top-end deck that you are guaranteed to play every single time. Like, if you were to go to your locals, and using the example of previously, there's 10 players, you are one of them, and of those remaining 9, 5, if not more of those, are all playing Draco Tail, you might put in a Ghost Reaper, hit an Arfulion, hit a Gulamel, and then they won't be able to play. Something along those lines. Again, that's not a guarantee, because decks, modern decks these days, they can continue to play, they continue to adapt, and they're very, very good even without one extra deck monster. Yummies, on the other hand, is probably a better example. If you Reaper out a Snatchy, it kind of gets a little bit more awkward for them. Ghost Warner, ultimately it's neither, just because I feel that Effect Veiler is then preferred. And Effect Veiler is either going to be main deck or a player preference option. It's kind of one of them ones that floats around a little bit. The benefit that Veiler has is the fact that it can be used multiple times. So if you have multiple copies, you can use multiple of them. Whereas with a Mourner, you can only use one of them. Yes, the benefit is if it leaves the field, you gain life points. So your opponent loses those life points. But again, it's really one of them ones where I don't feel that Mourner, like when you're trying to rank what hand interactions you use, it will always go Ash, in my opinion, it goes Ash, Fua, Droll, maybe Imperm, then Bell, maybe Veiler, maybe Ogre. Like, Reaper and Mourner barely get talked about. And that's before you even take into account Bystials as well. Bystials and the Nibiru. Like, crazy. Cosmic Cyclone, right now it's neither, but I don't mind Cosmic Cyclone being considered as a side deck card. Again, just using this example above, because we have so many cards that play on our turns, Frost into Harpies is going to be considered a lot more than playing 3 Cosmic Cyclone. You'd probably much rather play 2 Frost and a Harpies Feather Duster in the same space you would play 3 Cosmic Cyclone, just because your Frost could then lead you into your other targets of choice. Call by the Grave. Call by the Grave is a really weird one, alongside Crossout Designator. Now, Crossout Designator really comes down to if you're playing so many hand interactions yourself, or if you auto lose to a Droll, an Ash, or a Fua that you know everyone's going to be playing and you're playing already. Call by the Grave is either you main it or you don't bother. I find it so weird when Call by the Grave is in the side deck. Now, I know there are players that put Call by the Grave in the side deck. That's absolutely fine. I get you. I do get you. But it's a one-off. I've never been the biggest fan of siding in a one-of that isn't searchable. Like, I would side in a one-of if I'm playing Frost, because the way that I look at it is, if I play 3 Frost and one of that one-of, like a Drill with Tactic Talents, I have 4 ways to get to that card. But if I side in one Call by the Grave, I've got no way to get to it apart from sacking it and drawing it. Quite like, wherever he is, Dimension Shifter. Some decks will main it. It's ultimately a player preference card. You're not going to side in a Dimension Shifter. You just ride your luck. You just go, if I see it, great. If I don't see it, whatever. So, ultimately, Dimension Shifter is a player preference card. DD Crow, neither right now. Unless you're playing Genesis and it's like main deck / side deck. But ultimately, the way that we look at it is with DD Crows, you're either going to play Bystials or you're going to play DD Crows. I quite like Bystials right now. I feel that there's a lot of decks that disrespect the Bystials. There's a lot of decks that just don't even consider them anymore. Yes, there are a lot of decks that don't really care about Bystials, so DD Crow will be better against Draco Towers than a Bystial. But even then, a Bystial is just good against Yummies. It can be good against Mitsurugis. It kind of has a little bit more flex, which is why Bystials are then considered. But ultimately, when you're considering your Bystials, they're probably a lot further down. Like, they're probably after a Triple Tactics Frost than anything else. But I really rate Bystials. I think Bystials are really good. Nibiru, again, is just another side deck card. I think it's not a card that people will main more times than not. And what I mean by that is, again, going back to my past example, if you were to have all of these cards in front of you and you were told you have 15 slots in your main deck, what are you going to choose? Now, slot 1, 2, and 3 are going to be Ash. Slot 4, 5, and 6 are going to be Fua. So of those remaining 9 slots, you're probably going to choose Chalice, Imperm, Droplet, and then you're going to consider maybe a second Chummy, or Droll Lockbird, or Ghost Bell. Maybe you might consider Nibiru. Maybe. But again, in the current game state, a lot of players either play under Nibiru, play through Nibiru, play around Nibiru. It's just not a guarantee, But if you do combo it off with another hand interaction, then it gets more of a guarantee than anything else. Gozen, Rivalry, there can only be one. It is ultimately player preference, and it ultimately comes down to your deck choice as well. If your deck does not care about having a single... So, for example, I know someone at locals that plays Rivalry and Gozen because they only play Darks and Fiends. So, like, neither of those cards care. So you might as well play both. Now, when they were at 3, they were probably a more consistent side deck card than anything else. Same with there can only be one. Now that they're all at 1, quite like Skill Drain, it's just one of those sacky, do I have it, don't I have it? And if you do have it and your opponent's not prepared to out it, you're probably going to win. So, Gravecrew's Inscription. Gravecrew's Inscription is a bit of an odd one here because quite like Trill Tactics Thrust, it's a card you have to play at 3. But it kind of comes down to the environment that you're playing and what deck you are playing. So it has 3 effects and it has to be activated at the start of main phase 1. Of those 3 effects, it's either neither player can banish cards from the graveyard, neither player can summon cards from the graveyard, or neither player can activate card effects in the graveyard. So it's kind of like an Abyss Dweller that isn't an Abyss Dweller. Again, it only comes down, it's probably more down to a player preference, but it's a card you're not going to main deck. No way are you going to main deck that unless you are playing a deck that doesn't care about any of those clauses, and the environment, every single deck you play loses to a clause like that. Like, otherwise, you're just not going to consider it. Impulses and Purges, you're either maining them or you're not bothering. Do not side Purges or Pulses, because ultimately, again, these are probably going to come, these are probably at the higher end. Like, if you can play either of these cards, you are playing them. There's no question about that. These cards get played. Like, they're so good, especially Impulse. If you're playing a dark deck, you're playing Impulse. If you're playing a light deck, you're playing Purge. Like there's no question about that. Now, once these become more easily accessible, and hopefully they become very easily accessible in the Rarity Collection 5, everyone's going to have their hands on them. Everyone. Metaltronus, no one sides this anymore, or very rarely do people side Metaltronus. Ultimate Slayer, people very rarely use Ultimate Slayer anymore. Necro Valley, I rate Necro Valley. I think Necro Valley is very good, but with Necro Valley, you need to naturally play Terraforming, or naturally play a way to get to a field spell, and then you also need to not care about moving any cards in the graveyard. It's very specific. It doesn't get used. Contact C, this was really funny, alongside Prankatops, as these were 2 cards that were considered for the Yummy matchups, and then ultimately they just kind of died a death and never really got used. Zombie World, no one plays this card, but I still think it's really funny that when you're in a format where a deck requires their monsters to be a specific type, if you Zombie World lock them, it's so funny. Because then they're like, oh, I'll make this card, and you go, no, you can't, they're zombies. And they're like, oh, and then they have to reverse everything. Makes it really awkward. Phantasme, no one plays it at the moment, but it's one of these ones where if we go into an environment where Link summoning is a consistency and targeting is a consistency, then you're going to go for it. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't really affect Yummies that much. It doesn't affect Mitsurugis at all, and it doesn't affect Draco Towers at all. So it's just not consistent enough. This is probably the equivalent of putting this in against Yummy, as is Lancia against Malice. There are so many better options you could go for. Judgments, quite like there can only be one, goes to match and rivalry, because it's at 1. It's such a sacky, if I see it, good. But then people have tried to turn their ways to like Iron Thunder, Solemn. I think Solemn Strike is better than Judgment just because you got 3 of it. But I understand that Judgment protected you from spells and traps and everything. But ultimately, if you're looking at a Judgment, people go to Judgment and Iron Thunder first before they even consider Solemn Strike. More times than not. The final 5 cards, Change of Heart. No one plays Change of Heart anymore. Mind Control, everything like that. Same with Enemy Controller. It's one of these ones where someone will take it to a big event, maybe YCS Dortmund in February, nearly a month away, and maybe Joshua Smith will crack this out, or maybe someone will crack out the Enemy Controller, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, Enemy Controller is actually really good. And I'm like, well, yeah, and then it comes back into fashion. Book of Eclipse, player preference. I really liked Book of Eclipse. It's kind of okay against Mitsurugi because, I mean, they still tribute their card off. But if you can put it all face down, you can kind of make it a little bit awkward for them. But ultimately, it's just not that great. It used to be really, or considered to be really good against Yummies. Draco Tails, they don't really care because they're confused with face down. So, like, I like that it could be considered a player preference, but ultimately when I think about it more, probably no one's playing this. Retaliating C, again, I'm going to put this with Lancia. I'll tell you what, let's put this with Lancia. Dark Rule No More is considered a lot higher just because it hits more decks. And there will be decks that would just end on like 1,000,001 interactions. And you Dark Rule them and it's like kind of cool, GG, I can now play. Or you don't Dark Rule them and you don't get to play at all. But Retaliating C is kind of the equivalent of Lancia to Draco Tail as Lancia is to Malice. If your environment is all Draco Tail, then you'll probably consider side decking in a Retaliating C. If again, out of 10 duelists and you're one of those duelists, the remaining 9 players, 5 of them are on Draco Tail, you're going to side in Retaliating C. 2 of them on Draco Tail, you might take the risk and say, you know what, I've actually got cards that can deal with Draco Tail naturally anyway. Super Polymerization, you're either going to main it or you're not going to bother. I really like Super Polymerization. I just feel the issue with Super Polymerization right now is that the range of cards it can summon and decks it can affect along the top end isn't that great. Yes, it can kind of affect Yummies, but it only gets rid of 2 Yummy cards, and that still leaves them with the spell card to bring everything back, and they can continue to play. With Draco Tail, you go into the Secturion Dragon, causes them quite a few issues, but it doesn't end their turn because they can just attack over the Secturion Dragon and then continue to do their stuff. And then in Mitsurugi and Vanquish Soul, they don't really have consistent targets that get you the maximum value from it. So ultimately it comes down to player preference. Like if I feel that my deck is very aggressive as it is, and I've got a bit of space in my extra deck or whatever I need to for a Super Polymerization, I might consider it. But ultimately it kind of comes down to if you prefer Super Polymerization or you like Super Polymerization, you might be able to do a bit of damage. If not, you'll probably just roll with it and go, it's not that effective for me, I'm not going to use it. So that's pretty much it. I mean, there are probably some cards out there that I haven't really gone over, but that's, what, nearly 50? I think it's like nearly 50 images or 50 cards that I've kind of covered in that one. So hopefully it's giving you a bit of an idea into, like, just to give you a bit of an idea. Ultimately, like I said at the start of the video, it comes down to preference. Some players will prefer to do it one way, some players will prefer to do it the other way. There is no guarantor in Yu-Gi-Oh! That you must play it a particular way and you must do it a certain way. Apart from following the actual rules of the game and building a deck between, you know, 40 and 60 and 15 in your side deck, 15 in your extra deck, da-da-da-da-da. Apart from playing by those rules, there is nothing to say that you can't play... that you can't play a deck a specific way. There's nothing to say that you can't play 60 cards that plays... you know, 3 lava golems, 3 droplets, 3 ogres, 3 reapers, you name it. You can build and play however you want. That is the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! But, you know, there will be more efficient ways to do something. There'll be more efficient ways to build stuff. Ultimately, it comes down to individual creativity and then understanding and researching, you know, the game that you're looking to play. Anyway, hopefully this has been quite informative for you, giving you a couple of different ideas. If you do have any questions at all, by all means, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm always happy to answer them. For now, as absolutely always, stay safe and, of course, happy dueling.